Welcome to the podcast. We do recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
Episode 101 is on its way. So for today, I have a special episode for you guys. Today we have a newbie, a first-timer. I've asked Brayden Dobson to come on and share his journey into recovery. Before we get to that, though, let's get our sponsorships in. Episode 101 is brought to us by Steps Recovery Centers. Steps Recovery Centers is here to help you or a loved one get help as soon as you're ready to reach out. Reach out by giving them a call at 801-800-8142 or go directly to their website. That's stepsrc.com. Steps Recovery Center believes in evidence-based practice. They have you from start to finish, from detox, inpatient, outpatient, aftercare. Definitely, give them a call if you or loved one's ready to get some help. I mean, this podcast is about recovery, so I'm hoping that there's some people out there that either themselves or a loved one is in need of some help, right? Episode 101 is also brought to us by Rise Up Sups. Rise Up Sups is a supplement company that does nootropics. We have two formulas. The first formula is Mindful Mood. Mindful Mood helps decrease anxiety and enhance mood. And then we have our second product, Mind Shift. Mind Shift is going to increase focus and optimize brain function. So go to Rise Up Sups. That's RISEUPS.com. And for the month of November, podcast special only, we're doing 50% off at checkout. The code word is podcast 50. So type in podcast 50 at checkout, gets you 50% off. And I actually, speaking of that, Brayden, I brought you a bottle of some Mindful Mood.
Oh, right on. Okay, cool.
Yeah, give that a try.
Nice. All right.
Some good stuff. Some good stuff. So, well, let's get into it. How are you doing this morning, Brayden?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've been planning this for a couple weeks and some dates haven't worked out, but I'm excited to have you on. So we always start off with new and goods. Practice a little positive psychology, something new, fun, exciting going on in your life, right? Trying to get away from the doom and gloom. So what's new and good?
Well, I mean, the holidays are coming up and I get to see my family, so I'm pretty excited about that. I've been really into like meditation recently, and it's helped my mental health quite a bit. And I just recently got into it, watching some like YouTube videos and whatnot. And then, Wim Hof breathing. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wim Hof.
Oh, that's my favorite. I've been so into that recently. My roommate, he's super into it, and I wasn't really that into it until I started living with him, and now I do it like almost every day. So
that's awesome. Yeah. My routine is I typically wake up super early in the morning. I go to the gym. I come home. I do Wim Hof breathing, meditate for 10 minutes, take a cold shower, get ready, go to work. So you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Man.
Wait. What's this breathing thing?
Wim Hof breathing?
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
Man,
What is
you've
it?
never heard of it?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
what is it?
Okay. You got to hear about it.
Is it like your contractions?
It's like hyperventilating, but there's like a pattern to it.
So it's 30 deep breaths, belly breathing, followed by a pause where you're holding your breath after the 30th breath. The beginner one is for 30 seconds, and that's round number 1. Then you do 30 breaths again. You hold your breath for a minute. That's round number 2. Again, 30 breaths. Hold your breath for a minute. That's 3 rounds. Now, that's just the beginner.
Oh, geez.
The intermediate phase is the same thing.
Man. Is it you pass out at all?
No.
It sounds you hold your breath.
You can, but
Wife, what happened? I'm breathing on the floor, honey.
If you go to his YouTube, if you just go to YouTube and you type in Wim Hof breathing for beginners, I always recommend start off with, if you've never done it, start off with the beginner one, because your mind trips out after that first 30th breath and you start holding, your mind goes into panic mode, and it's about overcoming that fear.
Okay.
But he says in the recording, if you need to breathe, go ahead. Before I give it to you, go ahead.
Worried I was locked into a
you don't want to
contract
hurt
or something.
yourself, but yeah.
Freaking Sean. What's your new and good, Sean?
Oh, really? I'm getting a vasectomy today.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. 215.
Right on. No more kids.
I'm bringing my own scissors.
You're doing it to yourself, huh?
Well, you're
just trying to save on some.
Obamacare disappeared, so I'm just like, hey, well, I can do it at home, I guess.
Hey, I don't know that that's new and good, but maybe in a way it's new and good for you.
Yeah, it's just it's just one of those things where I'm like, what the heck?
Did the wife give you an ultimatum?
No. Actually, it's a different story, but yeah.
Oh, it was the girlfriend that gave you the
Oh,
ultimatum.
Anyway, so the funny side story, this keeps coming up whenever we talk about the vasectomy. My wife's friends, he got a vasectomy, and then the next day went ATV riding up in the mountains.
Bad idea.
And then 3 months later, wife was pregnant. And so he was like, you cheated on me. You cheated on me. You cheated on me. The doctor's like, no, you went ATV riding. The vasectomy didn't take.
Dang.
It's your kid.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
So I'm not going ATV riding this weekend.
Yeah, no. Take it easy. That's interesting though, because I've maybe we're getting a little too personal here and off topic, but I had a vasectomy, but they made it like super permanent. So they can actually clip it and singe the ends and
Yeah, but
all
it's your
kinds of
body,
stuff.
man. Things break.
So I don't know
and-
that bouncing on an ATV would like get it to reconnect and undo the singeing.
Well,
That's
if
what
you
I was thinking too. I mean,
you take a straw, you cut both ends, you cut the middle part, right, and you whatever. But then if the little part breaks and the other part breaks and it goes out and goes in and and then all wham, baby time.
Okay.
I'm no doctor, but
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Well,
you asked, man.
good luck.
I was
Good
thinking,
luck.
do I drop the bomb on him? Yes, I do. There you go.
Wim Hof is also known for his ice baths. So maybe after your vasectomy, you should do an ice bath because it's called a polar plunge
Yeah.
because it would help with the swelling and the inflammation. I
Well,
mean,
I
if you-
did buy some boxers on Amazon that have an
Packs?
ice pouch and a patch, and it's like it comes with two ice pouches. So you just like take. I'm sorry, man. This is way too much.
Nice.
This is not what you signed up for today. Is
it's good. It's
no,
good.
ice baths are amazing. Actually, I was telling my parents about this, and they were looking at me like I was crazy. But I take cold showers and do ice baths, and it feels so amazing when you come out. It's just like
For the 1st
you're
3 minutes.
Yeah, you're
it's hell.
euphoric. It's amazing. And during the winter, last winter, we, me, Chris, and our friend Peter, who he's since relapsed, but we used to, back when he was doing good, we would hang out with him. And we all went and we jumped in a river in the middle of wintertime, the Virgin River. And
Cold.
Yeah.
Gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I love it. Well, let's get into it, buddy. So today is basically you're the featured guest. I mean, it's the journey of Brayden Dobson.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be the title of this thing.
Oh, that's a good title. I like
So-
that. Yeah.
Let our audience get to know you a little bit more, right? Like, tell us a little bit about yourself, Brayden. Where are you from? Who's Brayden?
So I'm from Tooele, Utah. For those of you who don't know where that is, it's a small town just north of Salt Lake City. Has about 40,000 people, give or take. So I moved down to St. George back in 2014 originally for school, and I was going to
back when it was called
Dixie State. Yeah, back when it was called Dixie State.
Now it's Utah Tech University.
Utah Tech, yeah, they
fancy.
changed the name, yeah. And back then it was called Dixie State, and I went for a couple years, didn't do real great, failed out. At that time in my life, I was kind of getting more into partying and stuff like that, and that's kind of where things started to progress. I grew up LDS, and so I was never really into that, when I was younger and all that. But, when I got cut loose from my parents is when things really started to escalate, I guess you could say. And I have, I guess, just like all other people who struggle with addiction, I have an addictive personality. And so when I like something, I'm just going to keep doing it in excess.
Can you identify, like, even before the substance abuse, that? Because, like, I can think
Yeah.
back, and long before I ever touched a mind-altering substance, man, I was a fat kid.
Yeah.
I mean, Little Debbie was like my first girlfriend and probably one of my best, right?
Little
was-
Deborah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
those
what I
little
call
Debbie,
Little Deborah.
yeah, little Deborah treats, dude.
Yeah.
Like, the Swiss rolls and oatmeal cream pies. And I can look back and go, man, I even had an addictive personality when I was just a little youngster, right?
Yeah.
I would eat a whole box of those oatmeal cookies at a time.
Oh, I'm the same way, and my parents can attest to this. I would, I'd go trick or treating at 6 years old and eat the whole bag of candy before
Before you got home?
before I even got home. Yeah, that's it's funny you bring that up because I was just gonna say that next. For as long as I can remember, I've had that mentality where anything that felt good, I just wanted to keep rewarding myself.
Yeah.
And so, when around 2014, so I played sports in high school, and I got a hamstring injury, and I thought,
What sport were you playing?
so I played tennis mostly, but I did a little bit of football, but I didn't quite make it to the season. I kind of just was like, I guess you could say practice squad or whatever, but
Yeah, for sure.
I don't feel like I was good enough to, be on the team. So I kind of just quit, before the season started.
So you're playing tennis, pull a
yeah.
hammy.
Pull a hammy, and it just wasn't getting better, and we couldn't figure out why. And so, I go off to college, and I'm still having these issues, and I come home for Thanksgiving in 2014, and my parents, I keep complaining, so they decide they're going to take me into the doctor the day before Thanksgiving. It was Wednesday. And they do, like, their scans or their x-rays or whatever they do, and they send me home, and they say, we'll be in contact, we'll let you know. And then I get a call on Thanksgiving, and they call me because at this point I'm an adult, so they don't
Right.
call my parents first, they call me, and they say, we found a mass in your leg. And I'm freaking out, and they say there's a good chance it's cancer. And so I'm worried, of course, but I don't say nothing the whole day because we're with our family and we're
You don't
all
want to ruin Thanksgiving.
yeah,
right?
exactly. I don't want to ruin the vibe and the mood, so I kind of keep quiet, and then I tell my parents. I think it was the next day, and they're concerned for me. Of course, they love me and they care about me. But we go back to the doctor a little while later, and they tell me that they'll let me know whether it's cancer or not. And so I had to spend that whole holiday season, even through Christmas, kind of on the fence whether or not I was going to have cancer. They told me, it was a kind of a 50-50 type of deal.
And I hate that, right? Because sometimes the not knowing is almost
Oh,
worse
yeah.
than the knowing, because your mind just races. Like, what could it be? Is it cancer? Is it just a tumor? Is it, some kind of muscle mass? Is it just a abnormal growth? Like,
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel you, man. Sometimes that anxiety of not knowing is worse than hearing that it's cancer, because then at least you know what direction to move. For sure.
Yeah. So, it ruined my Christmas season, of course, because I was I couldn't think of nothing else. I couldn't even focus on my schoolwork because I was still in college, and come to find out it wasn't cancer, so I got lucky. Yeah, but it was they were tumors. And they told me that there were so many tumors that were in my legs and in my back that they couldn't remove them, because if they were to remove one, the blood loss alone from just one would make me bleed out.
Wow.
So, and there was, I don't know how many they said there were, but there's a lot. And so they said, you're just going to have to deal with this type of pain for the rest of your life, basically, and they said, they handed me a script of tramadol, which is like a low level painkiller. And they said, it's not very addictive is what they told me to begin with. And so I said, okay. And it didn't take me very long to just be eating those like candy. And
So that was kind of your first use.
yeah.
Okay.
And first use for like hard narcotics, because I had smoked weed and stuff like that, and drank, but not like, that was the progression, I would say.
Got you.
And so, that, like I said, it was super low level. So it didn't take me very long to get to the point where that wasn't working. And so, like I said, I had been going to parties and making different friends. I'm probably not the best friends. And they introduced me to, harder stuff. Started getting into harder painkillers, like some oxys, Vicodin, stuff like that. And at first I was taking it for the pain, but then it just became I was taking it because I had to,
Because you were physically dependent at that point.
physically dependent, yeah. And it got to the point where if I didn't take it, I'd get sick, and I couldn't be dope sick and go to school. And so I kept taking it,
Do you remember like a period or a time when you like tried slowing down or stopping on your own?
Yeah, there were many times where I tried to slow down and stop, but I just couldn't do it. And I didn't have any concept of what NA was or anything like that. I didn't know, like, I knew that there was a such thing as like treatment centers and recovery, but it never crossed my mind to try and get help like that, because I figured I was early 20s at that point. I thought this is what everybody did, because when I looked around and I saw all my friends, that's what they were doing.
Got you.
And so I thought that this was just the normal thing. You go off to college, you have a wild time, and then you grow up. You
And
know?
you probably don't think that you have a problem at this time, right?
Yeah, I didn't think it never crossed my mind that I had a problem because I thought that everyone was just wild in college, and then you graduated and you grew up.
Well, and one of the things that doesn't help is, I mean, you're getting a prescription from a doctor.
Yeah,
All the denials and the justifications and the rationalizations that we
Exactly.
tell ourselves, right?
yeah,
For sure. Okay.
yeah. And at that time, he also prescribed me some gabapentin, which is like a nerve type of medication. But the one thing I found out is that if you crush it up and you snort it, it's like a stimulant. And as soon as I got that taste of a stimulant, it was like I was off to the races, and that was my DOC. Anything that could, elevate me was what I wanted. And so
Now, what year of college are you in at this time?
So
First
I
year,
was a
second year?
sophomore at that point. I was 20, going on 21.
Okay.
And I had just failed out my first semester, and they gave me one more chance to, correct my academic problems. And if I didn't do that, then they were just going to expel me. And so I went through that whole semester just, not really caring. And then they expelled me. And so at that
So
point,
the wake-up call didn't really work for you.
no, not at all. And that made it even worse, in fact, because I didn't have the structure of going to class and at least trying to make something of myself, And
And to be fair, I mean, when we're abusing substances, mind-altering substances, the reason why it's called mind-altering substances is because it alters your mind.
yeah,
Your frontal cortex isn't working. Your rational decision-making is not there. I mean, yeah, you're just on the party train, and at that point, you couldn't get off without professional help, probably.
yeah.
Sounds like you tried stopping on your own. You tried slowing down. You just couldn't. You're physically dependent.
Exactly. And you can't do it on your own. That's the thing. There's a reason they say that in the groups that you have to admit that this problem is beyond your control. It's because it is. You can't just stop on your own. If you could, there would be no such thing as addiction.
Right. You would have.
Yeah, I would have stopped because no one wants to be physically dependent on anything,
Yeah, for sure.
And
So,
so,
how did the parents, I know your parents, I know your mom and dad.
Yeah.
They're sweet people. Shout
Yeah.
out to them. Love them. How did they react? You just failed out of college. You just
they were disappointed for sure. But my dad kind of has the attitude that I should learn from my own mistakes. He cares, and I don't want to, for anyone that's listening, I don't want
to paint the wrong picture.
to paint the wrong
Yeah.
picture. He cares, but he also wants me to learn from my own mistakes. And I think, that's a great way to learn, because you can tell someone not to do something, but until they learn the hard lesson, they're not going to really understand.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So
just to talk on that real quick.
Yeah.
Little side note, in one of my psychology classes that I took, one of the questions is, if you had a young child who you said, hey, Susie, Johnny, we're going to go to the park, go ahead and get dressed and get ready to go to the park. And they came out in like snow pants and a winter parka, and they're dressed, for a super cold day, but it's the middle of the summer. What do you do? And that was the question, the psychology question on one of the finals. And it was exactly to that point. Like, do you let them learn the hard way, or do you tell them to go in and change and basically, right? And so my answer was, I would take little Johnny or little Susie to the park, let them experience, and you warn them, right? Like, hey, it's hot. If I were you, I would change. And they're like, nope, this is what I want to wear. Take them, let them learn the hard way, and then have a extra, change of clothes pack to say, okay, now next time you might want to listen because it's a hot day and you're dressed cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sean.
I have a different answer for that one.
What's that?
You keep them dressed up in the parka, and you drive down to Maverick, and you put them inside the beer cooler. It's a win-win.
I guess it could be. But to his point, right? It's teaching them to learn from their own lessons. So shout out to your dad. I mean,
Yeah, and he's a great father. I could call him any time of the day or night, and he would be there to listen to me. But he also understands that he can't make my choices for me. So, as I was going through this and it was getting worse, they knew what I was doing. They knew that I was taking too much of my medication, and they knew I was popping pills and stuff like that. But I don't think that they quite understood the full extent of it, and the other stuff I was getting into too. Because, like I said, I grew up LDS, and so all of that sort of partying stuff, wasn't.
They were a
wasn't
little
cool.
naive to
Yeah.
it. A little naive.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say that. And I tried to keep it a secret too. And I was, associating with people that I knew that they wouldn't want me to associate with. So I tried to keep all that, a secret.
Mm.
And that didn't help because they would have gladly got me help if I would have asked for it. But they knew that I had to ask for it because they can't do it for me.
And an honest question here: did you not ask because maybe you didn't want it to stop?
That honestly, that, and also because I was scared. I didn't want to admit it.
So you're still in that pre-contemplation stage of change, right? Where you don't
Yeah.
realize you have a problem. You're not going to ask for help because you don't think you have a problem. And to be
Yeah.
honest, you're not ready to get help.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, part of me wanted it to continue, because I was having a lot of fun at that time. And where it got really bad was so I moved up to back to Twilla, Utah. And it's kind of a long story, but I moved up there. And when I was up there, I had met a girl down in St. George, and I was kind of sort of dating her. And I didn't know it at the time, but she was super into meth. And so she finally told me, I was taking a lot of Adderall because I got prescribed Adderall as well. So I was taking a lot of that. And she, one day I was hanging out with her, and she told me, I got something that's way better than Adderall. And she pulls it out, and that's my first experience.
Yikes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not uncommon though, right?
Yeah. And at first I didn't even know how to smoke it or anything like that. She had to show me all of that. I tried to smoke it like it was weed or something. But she
So that's really kind of when you cross addicted into from prescription pain medication into methamphetamine.
Yeah. And like I said, my drug of choice was any sort of stimulant. I say amphetamines because it's kind of like a catch-all. It's anything that could just get me up,
Got you. So even the Adderall, you weren't taking them as prescribed. You were trying to get high off them.
Yeah. And I was buying them off people, and I was I was going through bottles a day.
Right.
And like I would take like 400 milligrams at a time of Adderall, and that's to the point I was at. Adderall, it's a different type of amphetamine. It's dextroamphetamine, which is similar to methamphetamine. But I liked anything that would get me up,
Got you. Yeah.
So
you'd say that's your drug of choice.
Oh yeah, yep, 100%. And the more I hung out with her, the more I got into that. And so like I said, it's weird because when you're a kid, you would never like conceive of smoking meth. You never thought one day, I'd be a meth addict. You never planned for that. It's not like anyone has that in their agenda.
It's no childhood dream.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
But once I got to that point, it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal, I just kind of like had the attitude that, it's just a habit, it's just, some people have bad habits. Some people smoke cigarettes, some people eat too much junk food. I kind of had that.
So it had become normalized to you at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Where like you're saying, as a kid, you would have never fathomed that you'd be doing that one day. It was completely out of your scope. But because you kind of started off with smoking pot and drinking and then pain pills, and you're justifying it's from a doctor, and naturally it just became normalized.
Yeah, exactly. And it was the people I was hanging out with too, and the girl I was dating and her friends too. And everyone was doing it. So like, I knew it was obviously not a good thing, but in my mind at that time, I didn't understand how it was destroying me.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand how bad it could be and the road it could take me. And even after experiencing my first bout with homelessness, I still didn't. I still couldn't get my shit together, for lack of a better word.
We got about a minute left here.
Okay.
So just quick question, how long did it take from when you started using methamphetamines to the point of being homeless?
So it was just a little under a year.
And you're a pretty young cat. How old are you?
So I'm 27. Yeah.
27.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still, that's still fairly young.
Yeah.
So for a young guy like you to go from college student, you know, in a good cult, religion, you know, good
Yeah.
parents, to in less than a year you're homeless.
Yeah.
It's a pretty fast acceleration.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so to clear up the timeline, from the time I quit college was 2015, and the first time I ever tried methamphetamine was does that mean we're done?
We'll get right
Yeah.
back to you. We got
Okay.
a little 30-second
Okay.
sponsorship mention, and we'll jump right back into Brayden's story.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller, sponsored by Steps Recovery Center and the Hilton Garden Inn.
I'm Desmond Lomax, one of the clinical executives here at Steps Recovery, and once you become in the Steps family, you're just a part of the Steps family. A lot of us have overcome substances, overcome addiction, and now we're able to help other people. Second of all, we're also going to help you in a way where you can afford to be helped. Third of all, we're going to give you the same quality that many organizations are charging 2 to 3 times, and it's more about you than it is about our organization.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Episode 101, part 2. The journey of Brayden Dobson is underway. Before we get back to his story, we just want to show our sponsors a little bit of love. Episode 101, part 2 is brought to us by the Hilton Garden Inn. It is always sunny and bright at the Hilton Garden Inn. If you or, your family is traveling through southern Utah, give them a Google search. Just go to the Hilton Garden Inn in St. George, Utah. They have amazing amenities. The staff's always great. I promise you'll love the stay. Again, we appreciate their sponsorship. All right, Brayden, so the shot clock ran out on us last time. So you were clearing up kind of the timeline from when you left school to when the homelessness started. Let's get back there. So help us out with that timeline.
Yeah. So it wasn't like right away that I experienced homelessness. So when I quit college, or when I got kicked out of college rather, was like 2015, and the first time I ever was homeless was 2019.
So 4 years.
4 years, yeah. But from
But
the
you
time
hadn't
that
started using meth in 2015, right?
No. So the first time I used meth was 2018, when I met that girl, and then by summer of 2019, so a little less than a year after that, is when I was homeless.
At any point while you were going through that, did you ever like think to yourself like, man, this is crazy. Like I'm going to be homeless. And then
Yeah.
like, man, this is crazy. Like I'm homeless. And then, man, this is crazy. Like I'm still using these drugs that made me become homeless.
Yeah. I didn't like think of it in those terms. I didn't like sit back and think, wow, this is crazy. I just kind of like, I was just thinking of what I was going to do. You know, like, I know it sounds crazy to anyone who hasn't, battled with addiction, but I still was thinking, how am I going to afford my next score, like, and I wasn't planning on stopping at all.
So you weren't sitting back correlating the substance use of
No,
the
I
meth
wasn't.
with the homelessness. And listen, I'm giving you a kind of a bad time, but oftentimes I try to think from a listener's perspective, like, man, how could you not kind of correlate those two? Our stories are very similar. And
Yeah.
this is your episode, so I'm not going to go into my story, but I totally get it.
Yeah.
Because at that point in time, like, you are so driven by the midbrain, your brain is telling you, if we don't get more stuff, we're going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a lie. You won't die.
Yeah.
But the craving and the drug seeking and all of those addictive behaviors make you feel like it's the truth.
Yeah, and coming down from meth is horrific, but it's not as bad as like coming down from opiates. And so, I could deal with it, but at the same time I didn't want to deal with it. And so the reason I became homeless was indirectly because of my drug use. I was spending money that could have gone towards rent on drugs.
Sure.
And at that time, I was not working, and I was trying to do door-to-door sales, and it was commission-based. And so I didn't do very well on it, and the money I was making was going towards substances. And so I got kicked out of my apartment that I was living at. and that's how I became homeless the first time. So I didn't correlate it in terms of 1 + 1 = 2, but I think I knew on some level that that my choices all led up to that.
Right, right. And for those people that are listening to this and they're like, what are they even talking about? Right? Because like you said, not everybody can understand it.
Yeah.
Go to YouTube, type in Kevin McCauley, Pleasure Unwoven, and he does a fantastic job about explaining what happens inside the brain, and why it's a disease of choice, and all the kind of concepts that we're talking about now. It sounds like what he teaches in Pleasure Unwoven happened to you. The substance use became the number one thing, most important over food, over your apartment, over your relationships, over your employment, right? It just became that number one thing. And if you don't comprehend how that's even possible, I get it. That's okay. Go check out Kevin McCauley, Pleasure Unwoven on YouTube. He's got like 5 or 6 little clips. By the end of that, it'll make a little bit more sense.
Yeah. And so I ended up getting another place to live thanks to my parents. They basically just fronted the money, and I was homeless for like 3 or 4 months, and then it got to the point where I finally couldn't take it anymore, and I asked my parents if they would just loan me the money, and they did, and I ended up getting into this apartment. And I remember this day clearly because I was staying on a friend's couch, and I found this dude off Craigslist that was renting a room. And he said, I'll send my other roommate over to pick you up. And I said, okay, cool. And so this dude pulls up in a little Miata sports car. And I didn't realize it at the time, but this dude was a heroin addict. So he picked me up, and so I lived there for a little while. I was trying to be clean, I was doing Adderall and stuff like that, but I was trying to be clean. And then I found out this dude relapsed on heroin, and that's when the wheels fell off, and I rationalized it in my mind. If he's gonna relapse, then I'm gonna relapse, and so that's what happened. And I was dating another girl at the time, not the same one, but I was lying to her and telling her I was clean, but I wasn't. And it was just a whole mess.
Is that the first time you ever used heroin?
So I didn't use with him, but I had met another guy through work that I used with. I never was an IV guy, but I smoked it off tinfoil.
Yeah.
But I didn't like it too much because the first few times I did it, it made me super sick, nauseous. So I didn't like it that much. I'd rather just do pills. And so I wasn't very much into that. But
when you say the wheels came off, what did that look like? So
that whole period of time was just super chaotic. So the guy I was living with that he relapsed, me and him got along great, but our other roommate was just kind of like, I don't know how else to put it, but just kind of like a psycho. Like he wasn't even a druggie either. The only thing he did was drink, but he was crazy. Like
you say the only thing that he did is drink. You realize some people are for some people that's their drug of choice, and for some people that's what makes them.
I meant no disrespect, of course.
I know. It's just we oftentimes we think, oh well, it's socially acceptable, and so it's okay, but it's not okay if you're an alcoholic that can't control your behavior.
Right. Yeah. Right. Of course. Yeah. And I meant no disrespect to anyone who struggles with alcoholism. I do myself actually. So, so this guy, he would just go into these fits of rage for no reason. And so it was super chaotic living there. And I was also stealing Adderall from him, which I'm not proud of. But it happened. And I found out my other roommate was too. And so he would get mad because his Adderall was missing and he would go crazy. And so after that, I'll try and go faster because I know we had a time limit. But basically after that, he ended the lease on his apartment, so I moved in with this other lady. And I ended up getting into a fight with her son, got the cops called, got my first charge, which was a domestic violence charge. I was using throughout that whole period of time, so I was super unstable. And then she kicked me out, and I was homeless again. Found another place, and then homeless again. So that's the third time. And that's when you found me on the street.
Oh man.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember that day because what happened was I had been clean for like a month before that. And I was going to go to a party, and I told myself I wouldn't do any substances and I wouldn't drink. I would just have fun at the party.
Yeah, just go socialize.
Yeah, but obviously, if you're around something, it's going to happen.
Especially when you only have a month.
Yeah. And I can't control, my drinking at all. When I drink, I'm just going to keep drinking until I do something crazy. And that's how it's always been. And so, when they offered me a beer, it was just like, it was off to the races, and pretty soon they broke out the other stuff. They broke out the Coke, they broke out ecstasy, they broke out Xanax. And I remember all three of those being on the table. And I remember not even thinking twice.
Right.
I remember just, all at once. And I remember walking into this room, and I see this chick just on the bed, and she's just, having a hard time. And I could tell she was having a hard time. And I'm like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "No, I took 2,000 milligrams of Molly." And I'm like, "Holy shit, like that's a lot." And instead of helping her, which is what I should have done, I did the scumbag thing. And I'm like, "Well, do you know where I can get some Molly?"
Right.
And she's like, "Yeah, sure." So she pointed me towards this dude, and he hooked me up. And I remember the next thing I remember is just waking up on the sidewalk. And I had been drinking a lot, doing a lot of drugs. And I remember just calling my parents and just crying, just bawling my eyes out, just saying I relapsed, because I told them I'd been clean for a month, and I think they were pretty proud of me that I made it that far.
So this is kind of your rock bottom.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, waking up on a sidewalk.
Most people never have to experience that.
Right.
And so they said, well, we'll call our friend, John Gossett, who he's a great guy. He lives up in Tooele, and he runs a charity. He's an awesome guy, but he ended up calling you, and then you came and found me. And I remember you taking me to the hospital. I remember how rough I looked back then too.
So John Gossett has actually been a guest on this podcast before. He is a good buddy of mine. Yeah, it sounds like and that's actually how I met your parents. I went to see Casey Scott speak at I don't remember, one of his Life's Worth Living Foundation events, and your parents were there, and so he's a good dude. One of the things I just want to back up a second on is that's the problem, right? When I know everybody, they say, you got to find your path to recovery. And I know some people do like the California sober thing, right? Here's my take on that is the problem is when you relapse on something that's not your drug of choice. Let's say for you it was alcohol, right?
Yeah.
It lowers your inhibitions. You basically kind of are like, well, I've already done this, and I know something else that my brain likes even more.
Exactly.
Right? Uppers, that was
exactly,
your thing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the scary thing, and that's why I'm an abstinence-based guy. I find that I can't put anything in my body that's going to give me that lowered tolerance in my mind. Otherwise, I'm going to fold and go right back to heroin. That was my thing.
Exactly.
Right? Opiates.
Exactly. Yeah. And I totally agree. I think that abstinence is the only way. I know that people have different paths to recovery, and I don't mean any disrespect, however you do it. But for me personally, and this is just me, I find the same thing. I find that nothing can enter my body that is going to alter my mind. And that's how that's my mantra ever since I got clean a year and a half ago. And I'm coming up on my 18 months, which is December 5th. And I haven't had so much as a sip of alcohol, nothing, because I know that it'll all just lead back to where I was. And I remember how bad it was back then, and I never want to go back there.
Based on past evidence.
Yeah.
You already know, right?
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
You've done the research. You know how that research project turns out.
Exactly, yeah.
For sure.
And
so John Gossett, that was I can remember that day. Listen, back then he does Life's Worth Living Foundation, which is a suicide prevention. And I've gotten calls from him. I've gotten calls from several other people to go basically interventions.
right.
So yeah, but let's get it from your perspective. Walk me through that.
So I remember just waking up on the sidewalk, and it was June of 2021, and it was super hot because it was June and it's in St. George. And I remember I was too messed up to even be able to stand up. And I remember having to sit there, or just lay there, roasting on the sidewalk until I could even stand up. And then I just started walking. And I remember I was homeless and I didn't have service on my phone. So I had to find a place that had Wi-Fi so I could use the Wi-Fi to call my dad on Facebook. And so I finally found Domino's Pizza and I called my dad.
From the Wi-Fi.
From the Wi-Fi through Facebook, and he picked up, and I remember just crying, and he said, "Hold on, we'll get you some help." And I remember you showing up, and it's funny because at first I thought you were law enforcement, so I was trying to run away from you.
I don't know why I get that, man. I used to go downtown to score, right?
Yeah.
And all the people that were selling drugs downtown would be like, "Nah, he's an undercover cop." Like, everybody thinks I'm a cop, man.
Yeah, and so I remember you bought me some cigarettes and you bought me some food, and you said, would you consider going to treatment? And I remember saying no at first. I was like, no. But after a little while, I remember you saying, I'll take you to the hospital and you can just kind of detox and we'll figure things out. And you took me there, and I remember just debating, going back and forth in the hospital, whether I was going to go to treatment or whether I wasn't going to go to treatment. And there was this one nurse that would sit by my bedside almost every night and talk to me. And she said that her brother had addiction issues and that she could see where it was leading. And she's like, "I don't want you to die."
Mm.
And so because of her and because of you and a lot of other people, I decided I was going to accept help for myself. And I knew I was at rock bottom. I knew that there was no path other than death for the way I was going.
Yeah.
Death or incarceration is where I was headed. And so I went to treatment, and at first I didn't really thrive in treatment. I kind of had an attitude that I was going to come in and I was just going to go through the motions. And as things progressed through treatment, people got through to me. They would sit down and talk to me like I was human. And it wasn't like I was used to being treated. Most people who would see me on the street would treat me like I was just a piece of trash.
Yeah. I like to say, we'll love you until you start to love yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And after treatment, I got into sober living, and I remembered how bad homelessness was. And so I told myself, there's no way I'm going to end up on the street again, so I'm going to stay clean. And there were some points that were really hard. My first few months out of treatment, I would get the worst cravings ever. I would just obsess over how I could get high and hide it from my house. I never did, but I would always obsess over it.
Which is pretty normal. It's funny because, when I work as a substance abuse counselor now, right? And in residential, it's like somebody will, say, "I feel terrible for saying this, but I'm having some really bad cravings and triggers." And I'm like, "Don't feel bad for saying that.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you're normal. That's normal."
Yeah.
Right? Talking about it is what's going to help. Like, keeping it a secret is only going to keep you sick and going to keep those thoughts continuing to spiral.
Exactly. And that's what they instilled in me in treatment. And I was lucky because I think I ended up in one of the best sober houses, Parkway Sober House, because it was full of a group of guys that any one of them would sit down and talk with you if you were having a bad day, or if you were having cravings, or if you were feeling like you were on the brink of using. Any one of them would sit down and talk with you.
That's awesome. That brotherhood, that camaraderie.
Exactly, yeah. And I honestly, I don't know if I would have stayed sober if I hadn't ended up in that house because, like I told you before this podcast started, the way everything happened and the people I met, I think it was all meant to be. I think it was God, because there's no other explanation in my mind.
It's your higher power working in your life.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly, yeah. And I just had to be willing, and I was willing. And so I stayed in sober living for a year. I was only planning on doing a few months, but I told myself at a certain point I was going to stick it out a year no matter what. And I forced myself to go a year, and I had an opportunity to move out sooner, but I decided that I was going to stick to my plan and stay for a year. And then one of the people I met in sober living, he ended up getting another place. His name's Christopher Spenlove, and I moved in with him. And then,
just so everybody knows, he's not giving up his anonymity. Christopher works with me. He's totally cool
Yeah.
with him throwing out his
he's
name.
Cool. Yeah, he's cool with it. And so
Great dude.
yeah, I moved in with him, and he's been an awesome influence in my life too, because I can talk to him anytime, and he will sit there and listen to me for hours if I need it. And he has listened to me for hours. I've talked to him all night before on many occasions. So I'm so lucky that I found the people that I did, and so many amazing people. The recovery community in St. George is amazing. It's like no other, you know. There are so many wonderful people that are like God's angels, and I feel like anybody who's struggling with addiction that might be hearing this, if you allow yourself to accept help, you won't regret it. It'll be the best thing you ever did for yourself.
It's funny because you've talked about every single one of the pieces of the 4 pillars that is predominant in recovery, right? Bio, your physical health. Psychological, so it's bio-psycho, all the thoughts, the cravings, the depression, anxiety, all that type of stuff. Social, it sounds like getting into the fellowship and guys like Chris, that nurse, that whole community of recovery down here that you've talked about. It's that 3rd pillar. Then spiritual. I mean, looking back, you've been able to piece it together and go, this wasn't a coincidence. This is my higher power stepping into my life and making this happen for me. And I think those 4 pillars are so important that people don't understand. Like you have to take care of yourself physically. You need to talk to somebody and get your mental health in check. The social piece is super important, and that spiritual piece is super important. I've really enjoyed listening to your recovery, because again, for me, I get a call. Hey, I got a guy that's struggling. Need you to go help him. Did you know I drove around for 45 minutes and I couldn't find you?
Really?
Because they were like, he's at the Domino's, and I drive past there. I'm like, he's not at the Domino's, right? I'm calling him back. And then they gave me a description and sent me a picture of you on my phone. And so then I'm driving down the road, River Road, and I see you, and I look at the picture, and I'm like, it could be him, right? Because you were looking rough, bro,
I had this blonde, shaggy hair back then, dyed blonde hair. I didn't even look like my pictures,
So it's been fun to, and you've already talked about what happened from that point, but it's been fun to hear kind of your journey and what's happened since then. And I've done interventions for many people, and I shared this with you before we jumped on here. Not too many of them have stayed in recovery, and I'm super proud of you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And like I said, I think that a lot of it really did have to do with I was blessed enough that God put me in the path of the right people. I mean, I'll take credit and say that I worked hard on my recovery, but also I have to give partial credit to God, because I feel like he put me in the path where he knew I'd meet the right people, and those people would be great influences in my life for me to stay sober. So I can't do it without my higher power at all.
The part I think that you need to credit yourself for is that willingness.
Yeah.
Right? Because people can't get help if they're not ready to get help. People can't get help if they don't stay in the hospital and at least have the discussions with the nurses and then go to treatment and struggle in treatment and get out and be in early recovery and have all those cravings and talk to people about them and being able to move into a sober house. And right, like, it takes willingness. It takes honesty. It takes openness. It takes willingness.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the first time I ever had willingness, because I was always trying to, kind of do it my way before, and my way didn't work. It never did.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Our best thinking got us there. Our best thinking's not going to get us out.
Yeah.
So we got about 3 minutes left here, Brayden.
Okay.
So what's on the horizon for you, man? You got about 18 months clean. I'm a big believer in setting goals and chasing after goals. I mean, what's next for Brayden Dobson?
Oh, so yeah, right now I'm trying to save up and get back into college. I to the admissions recently, and they told me that because I was expelled before, I have to pay out of my own pocket to get back into college. So right now I'm just trying to save for that. And I'm going.
In other words, you can't get a loan.
Yeah, I can't get a loan because I was expelled. So I want to pursue a sports journalism degree.
Way cool.
Yeah, and hopefully be on the radio or something like that. I think that'd be way cool.
I know a guy that runs a radio station.
Oh, really?
What? Huh?
Yeah. Sean Denovan might be over the radio down here.
You walk in this room, right? And the next one's a radio station.
Yeah.
And the one 20 feet over is a radio station. And the one on the other side of this wall is going to be a radio station next month.
And he's always looking for good guys
Yeah,
to come on and
yeah,
talk
come-
about
come
sports.
talk to
Yeah,
me.
Radio
give me his
journalism.
number. I'm serious.
I'm
yeah.
right here, man. Let me give me his number. It's me.
Oh, it's you?
It's me.
It's you?
Yeah, it's
I didn't
me.
realize that's okay. I feel stupid
love
now.
it.
I feel stupid now. Okay,
all
I'm gonna
good.
grab
It's
your
all
number.
good.
I mean it. I'm gonna grab
It's
your
all
number.
good.
It's your higher power working again in your life. We might have some
Exactly, yeah.
connections here.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm just so excited for the future because I'll tell you what. A year and a half ago, I couldn't even conceive I'd be here. So I can't even imagine what it's gonna be like a year and a half from now, or even 10 years from now. I also want to help other people too. So that's part of my goal too. Is I want to. I have a recovery podcast too. It's not quite as high tech as this, but my whole point is to try and help people. You know, and if
Absolutely.
anybody can listen to what I'm saying on here and just take something from it, then I'll feel happy about that.
Give yourself a plug, man. What's the name of your podcast?
It's called Shooting Hope.
Shooting Hope.
Yeah, Shooting Hope.
How many episodes have you guys done?
We've only done like 3, and we haven't done it since February. Like I said, we aren't very consistent, but we're gonna get back and be doing it. So yeah,
Cool, man.
look out for that. But I'm just so excited for what the future holds for sure.
Listen, I really appreciate you coming on here and being willing to share all your dirt with
Yeah.
it. This is an international podcast. We have downloads in Europe. We have downloads
Right on.
in England. I guess England is part of Europe, right, Sean?
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, Australia, all across
part
the
of
United
England.
States.
That's
Just
part of
over
Europe.
there, across the ocean. Across the ocean.
Everything on the other side of the beach is Europe.
There you go.
Doesn't matter what.
Yeah.
So,
Everything not America is Europe.
so up in Canada, a lot of people are going to hear your story, and I'm sure you're going to inspire a lot of people, and it's because you're willing to come on and be vulnerable. So thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say real quick before we end, anyone who's struggling and wants help, do it. It'll be the best thing that you've ever done for yourself.
Thanks again, bro. Love you.
Love you too.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. This has been a production from a podcast studio.